Imagine a farmer standing in the middle of an empty field. Every morning he arrives early, lifts his hands, and prays passionately for a harvest. He sings over the soil. He speaks hope over the soil. He tells everybody, this year I am expecting increase. But when planting season comes, he puts no seed in the ground. Now tell me, is that farmer sincere? Yes. Is he hopeful? Yes. Is he expecting something good? Absolutely. But will sincerity produce corn where no corn was planted? No. The field does not respond to wishes. The field responds to seed. Write this down. Desire is powerful, but desire is not self-executing. You can desire a harvest and still violate the process that produces it. Emotion cannot substitute for preparation. Hope cannot harvest what conduct never planted. You may cry beside an empty field, but tears are not seed. You may work around the field all day, but activity is not cultivation. You may blame the weather, the economy, your childhood, or your neighbor's larger farm, but none of those explanations will place seed in your soil. Ladies and gentlemen, this principle reaches far beyond agriculture. We want financial stability without managing what passes through our hands. We want trust without consistent honesty. We want healthy lives without building sustainable habits. We want competence without practice, promotion without preparation, and results without responsibility. Then, when the outcome disappoints us, we call life mysterious. But many outcomes stop being mysterious when the governing principle becomes visible. Say that aloud. My results become clearer when I identify the principle beneath them. That statement is not meant to condemn you. It is meant to restore your power to respond. If a result is connected to a principle, then you can study the principle. You can correct your alignment. You can change what you repeatedly plant, practice, tolerate, and manage. Now, do not misunderstand me. I am not arguing against prayer. Pray. I am not arguing against hope. Hope. And I am certainly not arguing against hard work. Work diligently. But prayer must not become a substitute for obedience. Hope must not become an excuse for passivity. Hard work must not become endless motion in the wrong direction. The key is alignment. Praying while planting, hoping while preparing, and working according to the process that produces the desired result. So before we diagnose the recurring problems in our lives, we must separate three ideas people often mix together. We must understand what is promised, what is exceptional, and what operates repeatedly. We must distinguish a promise, a miracle, and a principle. A promise, a miracle, and a principle are all valuable, but they do not perform the same function. Confusion begins when we ask one to do the work of another. Make a note of these three definitions. A promise is an assurance. It reveals what is possible, gives direction to expectation, and supplies hope for the journey. But a promise does not always remove your responsibility to respond. If someone promises to meet you at a destination, you still have to begin traveling. The promise gives confidence. It does not walk for you. A miracle is an extraordinary intervention. It enters a situation where ordinary ability has reached its limit and produces what the normal process could not produce at that moment. We thank God for miracles. We pray for miracles, but you cannot turn an exceptional intervention into an excuse for habitual irresponsibility. Suppose a person experiences a medical emergency and skilled responders preserve that person's life. That rescue is precious. But after the rescue, if a harmful and changeable pattern contributed to the crisis, wisdom says the pattern must be addressed. Emergency care can save you from a moment without teaching you how to govern the next 10 years. Now, a principle is different. A principle is a dependable cause and effect relationship. When its conditions are respected, certain consequences ordinarily follow. When it is repeatedly violated, other consequences tend to follow. Principles organize daily life. Say this with me. Promises reveal possibility. Miracles interrupt impossibility. And principles organize ordinary life. Consider a student. Encouragement can restore confidence. Unexpected assistance may preserve an opportunity, but neither can permanently replace study, practice, correction, and understanding. You cannot build an educated life on examination day rescue. At some point, you must learn. This is where many people become confused. They hear how something extraordinary happened for another person, and then they try to copy the event as though it were a method. But God is creative. The form of help may differ from one life to another. You do not build your future by imitating somebody else's exception. You build it by discovering the transferable principle beneath responsible growth. So inspect your expectation. Are you standing on an assurance that requires a response? Are you asking for an exceptional intervention in a genuine crisis? Or are you avoiding a repeatable process that wisdom has already made clear? Faith is not passivity. Hope is not denial. Expectation must learn where to stand. Now that these categories are separated, the next question becomes unavoidable. What happens when a principle is already operating, but you do not know it, or worse, you know it and refuse to respect it? Suppose you approach an intersection, fail to notice the red light, and continue driving. Your lack of awareness may explain why you entered the intersection, but it does not make the intersection safe. The other vehicles do not disappear because you were uninformed. The law of motion does not pause to examine your intentions. Write this down. An explanation may reduce blame, but it does not automatically remove consequence. Say it again. Not knowing may explain the mistake. It does not suspend the result. This is why knowledge matters. Knowledge does not create the principle. Knowledge reveals the principle so you can cooperate with it. Ignorance leaves you guessing inside a system that is already operating. Consider your health. Repeated patterns involving rest, movement, nourishment, stress, and professional care can influence well-being, whether you pay attention to them or not. Now, we must be responsible here. Not every illness is caused by personal behavior, and suffering must never become an excuse to condemn people. But where a changeable pattern is contributing to harm, refusing to examine it does not protect you. Compassion and responsibility can occupy the same room. Consider money. If resources enter your hands but you never track them, plan their purpose, restrain unnecessary consumption, or prepare for future obligations, an increase may provide temporary relief without creating lasting stability. More money moving through the same disorder can produce a larger version of the same problem. Consider trust. You may love someone deeply. You may apologize sincerely. But if dishonesty, unreliability, or contempt remains active, affection alone cannot preserve confidence. Trust listens to patterns. Your mouth may announce one intention while your conduct keeps delivering another message. And consider learning. Sitting in a room where information is presented is not the same as understanding it. Owning books does not make you wise, otherwise every bookshelf would be a university professor. Knowledge must be examined, practiced, tested, corrected, and applied. Information becomes useful when it governs action. Now, make this distinction carefully. A principle is not the same as a custom. Customs can change. Methods can change. Technology can change. The way one generation studies, communicates, works, or organizes a household may differ from another. But honesty still protects trust. Preparation still improves readiness. Responsibility still creates order. Cause still has a relationship with effect. Wisdom, therefore, is not merely memorizing rules. Wisdom is recognizing which principle governs the situation and choosing conduct that agrees with it. So stop beginning every recurring problem with, "Why does this keep happening to me?" Ask a stronger question. What repeated choice, missing condition, or ignored process may be helping to produce this? That question does not claim that every hardship is your fault. It simply refuses to surrender the part of the situation you can examine and change. And the clearest picture of this process is still the field, because there an invisible principle becomes a visible result. What is planted disappears for a season before it returns as a harvest. Now the farmer has planted. The seed is finally in the soil, but when he returns the next morning, he sees nothing. The field looks exactly as it did yesterday. Was the planting useless? No. The process has entered a stage where development is real, but visibility is low. Write these 3 words down: seed, time, cultivation. The seed determines the kind of potential placed into the ground. Time permits that potential to develop. Cultivation protects and supports the process while development is taking place. Remove any one of the 3 and the harvest is threatened. A farmer cannot plant today and demand fruit tomorrow. Neither can he plant corn and become angry when mangoes do not appear. The nature of the seed matters. The conditions matter. The care matters. The season matters. And seed is not limited to money. Your words are seed. Your attention is seed. Study is seed. Service is seed. Honesty is seed. Every disciplined choice places something into your future. The difficulty is that small actions often look powerless at the beginning. 1 hour of study does not make you a master. One responsible decision does not create financial stability. One honest conversation does not rebuild years of damaged trust. But repetition begins constructing something beneath the surface. Knowledge, capacity, credibility, restraint, and strength. Now reverse the principle, because it works in both directions. Neglect is also seed. Resentment is seed. Impulsive spending is seed. A promise repeatedly broken is seed. These choices may produce no immediate disaster, so people assume there is no consequence. They say, nothing happened. Something did happen. It simply has not become visible yet. Consequences often arrive later than choices. That delay is dangerous because it tempts us to disconnect the harvest from the seed. We celebrate a harmful choice because pain did not appear immediately, or abandon a constructive choice because progress did not appear immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, delay does not prove that a principle has stopped operating. But we must also avoid simplistic promises. Not every effort produces the exact return you imagined. Soil differs. Seasons change. Environments matter. Some methods need correction. Some seeds fail. Wisdom does not merely plant. Wisdom observes, cultivates, learns, and adjusts. Still, the kind of seed sets the direction. You cannot repeatedly plant dishonesty and reasonably demand trust. You cannot plant indifference and demand intimacy. You cannot avoid practice and demand mastery. Desire does not alter the identity of the seed. So conduct a seed inventory. What are you planting with your time? What are you planting with your speech? What future is your spending preparing? What is receiving your attention? Which associations are influencing the soil of your mind? Do not answer according to intention. Answer according to repetition. Say this aloud. Tomorrow is being influenced by what I repeatedly practice today. That statement should give you both caution and hope. Decline can grow invisibly, but so can transformation. The fact that you cannot yet see the result does not mean today's faithful action is empty. Planting, however, is not the entire responsibility. A person can have good seed, sincere commitment, and tremendous energy, and still waste effort through an ineffective instrument. So next, we must examine the difference between working harder and becoming more skillful. Picture two workers facing the same field. The first grips a dull tool and swings with all his strength. Hour after hour, he sweats, strains, and becomes exhausted. The second worker pauses, examines the edge, sharpens it, and then returns to the work. By evening, the first worker is more tired, but the second has accomplished more. Now answer honestly. Have you mistaken exhaustion for effectiveness? Have you mistaken a full schedule for a fruitful life? Write this down. Effort supplies energy, but skill gives energy direction. Hard work is honorable, but hard work applied through a poor method can deepen frustration. When the method fails, many people simply intensify it. They speak louder instead of learning to communicate. They extend their working hours instead of repairing a broken process. They read the same information repeatedly instead of practicing its application. They confuse increased pressure with improved performance. Ladies and gentlemen, repetition does not automatically produce mastery. Repetition with correction produces mastery. This is where knowledge and wisdom must work together. Knowledge gives you facts, concepts, and tools. Wisdom recognizes which tool fits the problem, when to use it, and how its use will affect other people. A person can own an impressive toolbox and still damage the house by choosing the wrong instrument. The key is not merely to know more. The key is to apply what you know with judgment. And that means you must learn to respect feedback. Results are not insults. Results are information. If the same method keeps producing the same weak outcome, the outcome is trying to teach you something. But pride makes people defend a method because their identity has become attached to being right. A mature person asks, what is this result revealing that I have been unwilling to see? Skill grows through instruction. Skill grows through repetition. Skill grows through correction, patience, and contact with people who can identify weaknesses you cannot yet recognize. That is why teachability is not a personality preference. It is a requirement for development. So take a sharpening pause and ask 3 questions. First, what result am I actually trying to produce? Second, which part of my present method is not working? Third, what capability must I develop before I invest more effort? Do not use this teaching as an excuse for laziness. Sharpening without swinging is preparation without execution. Some people attend courses, collect notes, and discuss strategy forever, but never enter the field. That is not wisdom. That is educated hesitation. Yet swinging without sharpening is labor without development. You need both. Say it aloud. I will work diligently, remain teachable, and improve my method. Sustainable progress requires effort, skill, reflection, and correction working together. Stop glorifying fatigue as though being tired proves you were effective. Let your labor learn. Let your method mature. Let feedback refine your gift. But once improved skill begins producing greater value, another test immediately appears. Can you manage the opportunity, resources, influence, and increase that your better work brings? That is the test of stewardship. Let me ask you a dangerous question. If your income doubled today, if your opportunities doubled, if your influence doubled, or if somebody handed you twice as much free time, would your life become more orderly, or would your present disorder simply become twice as large? Do not answer quickly. Many people believe increase will repair what only management can repair. But more does not cure disorder. More exposes it. Write this down. Stewardship is the accountable management of an entrusted resource according to its purpose. Stewardship is not merely about money. Your time is a resource. Your health is a resource. Your attention, relationships, knowledge, opportunities, authority, and personal gifts are resources. The question is not simply, what do I possess? The better question is, what has been placed in my care? Why was it entrusted to me? And what does responsible use require? Ownership thinking asks, what can I take from this? Stewardship thinking asks, what am I responsible to produce through this? Imagine water being poured into a leaking container. The owner complains that the supply is too small, so the supply is increased. But the water still disappears because the leak remains. Increasing the flow cannot repair the vessel. Some of us are praying for more water while refusing to inspect the container. Ladies and gentlemen, repair the leak. In your finances, stewardship means knowing what comes in and where it goes. It means distinguishing a genuine priority from an impulse wearing the clothes of necessity. It means practicing restraint and preparing wisely for changing seasons. If you never examine the movement of your money, your emotions will assign it before your purpose does. Your calendar also reveals stewardship. People say, this is important to me, but their time repeatedly serves something else. Your calendar is often more honest than your intentions. Attention follows what you continually permit, and time given away without purpose cannot be recovered by regret. Then there are your gifts. Potential is not production. Ability that remains undeveloped cannot serve people merely because it exists. An opportunity neglected is still an opportunity lost. A gift must be trained, directed, and placed in service to become fruitful. Now, management is not fear. It is not hoarding everything because you are terrified of tomorrow. Wise stewardship preserves enough capacity to meet present responsibilities and support future purpose. It knows when to use, when to save, when to give, when to rest, and when to develop. So perform a resource audit. Draw 4 columns. First, what has been entrusted to me? Second, what purpose should it serve? Third, how am I actually using it? Fourth, what disorder must I correct? Do this with your money, time, attention, relationships, opportunities, and gifts. Do not measure yourself by what you intended to manage. Measure what your patterns reveal. Say this aloud. Increase is safest when my responsibility grows with it. Provision without order can become waste. Opportunity without maturity can become damage. Influence without character can become danger. Stewardship is the bridge between receiving something and turning it into meaningful service. But resources do not operate in isolation. Nearly every opportunity is carried through people, every responsibility affects people, and much of what we call success depends upon human confidence. So now we must examine another harvest governed by repeated conduct: trust. Why do we demand respect while behaving disrespectfully? Why do we demand loyalty while remaining unreliable? Why do we demand intimacy while withholding honesty? We often ask relationships to produce outcomes that our repeated conduct does not support. Write this down. Trust is confidence accumulated through truthfulness, consistency, competence, and care over time. Trust is not created by one impressive speech. It is built when words and actions continue agreeing. It grows when people discover that your promises are dependable, your motives are honorable, your abilities are being developed, and their well-being matters to you. That is why one dramatic apology may reopen a door, but it cannot instantly rebuild the house. If betrayal occurred repeatedly, repair will usually require more than emotion. The apology may be sincere, yet trust still needs truth, changed behavior, and time. Speech is seed. Words of honor create dignity. Clear words create understanding. Grateful words create warmth. But gossip creates suspicion. Contempt creates distance. Deception creates instability. You cannot poison the atmosphere all week and demand peace because you said something pleasant on Sunday. And this principle becomes even more serious when authority is involved. Authority is not private property. It is an entrusted capacity to serve, guide, and protect. When influence is used to manipulate, exploit, or conceal wrongdoing, people are harmed, and the authority itself loses legitimacy. Boundaries therefore function like laws within relationships. They identify the conduct that protects connection and the conduct that makes connection unsafe. A boundary is not automatically rejection. Sometimes it is the structure that prevents love from becoming permission for harm. Now consider leadership. When the person responsible for upholding a standard secretly violates it, the damage travels beyond one private act. Confidence in the office, organization, family, or community may also be weakened. Character matters because leadership depends upon credibility. Make this distinction carefully. Forgiveness and restored access are not identical. Forgiveness can release revenge and refuse hatred. But renewed trust may still require confession, repair, accountability, demonstrated change, and patience. Demanding immediate access is not proof of repentance. Sometimes it is another attempt to escape consequence. So choose one strained relationship. Do not begin with everything the other person did. Begin with your own field. Ask, which seed have I repeatedly planted here? Which responsibility is genuinely mine? What truth must I speak? What promise must I keep? And what pattern must I change? You cannot control another person's response. You can govern your contribution. Character is the principle you have internalized so deeply that it directs your conduct when nobody is watching and no external authority is present. It makes trust possible because it gives behavior continuity. But this brings us to the most sensitive question in the message. If a person can be forgiven, does forgiveness cancel the discipline required to change? Imagine a person standing before a judge after violating the law. The evidence is clear. The consequence is deserved. But the judge chooses mercy and says, I am giving you another opportunity. Do not return here through the same conduct. What has happened? The standard was not declared meaningless. Mercy created space for a different future. Write this down. Grace is restored opportunity and enabling help to choose what is right after failure. Grace does not say the destructive pattern was harmless. Grace says the person is more valuable than the pattern and need not remain imprisoned by it. Forgiveness addresses guilt and restores the possibility of relationship. Discipline addresses the behavior that produced the harm. We need both. Forgiveness without correction may remove shame while leaving the person exposed to repetition. Discipline without mercy may confront the behavior while convincing the person that change is impossible. Ladies and gentlemen, compassion and responsibility are not enemies. Consider a loving household. Wise parents do not prove their love by removing every boundary. A home without expectations, responsibility, or correction does not become more loving. It becomes disordered. Boundaries protect development. They teach that choices affect other people and that freedom must live with responsibility. Accountability, therefore, is not automatically rejection. It may require honest confession. It may require restitution where repair is possible. It may require temporary limits, new safeguards, wise supervision, and a season of demonstrated consistency. These measures do not deny restoration. They give restoration structure. Now, some people fail and sentence themselves forever. They turn one act into an identity and say, "This is all I will ever be." No. Honest repentance faces the wrong, learns from it, and changes direction. You are responsible for the failure, but you do not have to build your identity inside it. Others move to the opposite extreme. They express remorse, request forgiveness, and then reject every practice that would prevent repetition. That is not mature repentance. If you refuse correction, avoid accountability, and protect the same conditions, your sorrow has not yet become a new direction. Say this aloud. Mercy gives me another opportunity. Discipline teaches me how to use it. Grace restores you so that you can return to alignment. It gives hope to the person without giving permission to the pattern. It lifts condemnation while restoring responsibility. Now we are ready to turn the entire message into action. If the same problem keeps returning, how do you uncover what lies beneath it? Is there an ignored principle, a missing skill, an unmanaged resource, or an uncorrected pattern? We need a practical diagnosis. We must trace the visible fruit back to its hidden root. Now choose one recurring problem, not 5, not your entire life. Choose one. Perhaps it is a financial cycle that keeps returning, damaged trust, stalled development, chronic disorganization, or a promise you repeatedly make and repeatedly fail to keep. We are going to trace the fruit back to the root. Step 1. Name the fruit. Describe the observable result without exaggeration, spiritual camouflage, or excuses. I repeatedly spend beyond my plan. I avoid difficult conversations until resentment grows. I begin projects but do not finish them. If you cannot name the result honestly, you cannot diagnose it accurately. Step 2. Trace the pattern. What actions, omissions, environments, and decisions usually appear before the result? What happens repeatedly? The fruit may surprise you, but the pattern often does not. Step 3. Identify the governing category. Is there a principle you are ignoring? A skill you have not developed? A resource you are not managing? A harmful relational pattern you keep permitting? Or are you expecting an exceptional rescue where a repeatable process is required? Make a note. Diagnose before you intensify. More effort applied to the wrong problem can create more frustration. Step 4. Separate responsibility from blame. Some circumstances were not chosen by you. Some injuries were caused by others. Some conditions remain beyond your control. Acknowledging that truth is not weakness. But after acknowledging what you cannot control, identify the next principled action that is within your authority. Step 5. Choose a replacement seed. Do not say, "I want to do better." That is a desire, not a behavior. Decide to track each expense. Schedule daily practice. Keep one specific promise. Seek instruction. Establish a necessary boundary, or repair a neglected responsibility. Step 6. Give the decision structure. When will you do it? Where will you do it? How will progress be measured? Who can ask you whether it was done? Inspiration without structure evaporates. Structure turns intention into practice. Step 7. Allow development. Review the results at a consistent interval. Study what is working. Sharpen what is weak. Correct drift. Do not dig up the seed every morning because you are impatient for evidence. Now listen to the whole chain. Hope must meet principle. Principle must shape conduct. Conduct must become consistent. Results must be examined. Skills must be sharpened. Resources must be managed. Relationships must be cultivated. And mercy must lead to correction. Write the problem, name the principle, choose the seed, repair the leak, build the structure, begin today. Return with me to the field. The farmer is no longer standing over empty soil demanding a harvest. Now prayer accompanies planting. Wisdom tends the ground. Discipline remains faithful through the hidden season. When growth appears, It is received with gratitude and managed with humility, not seized with entitlement. You do not control every storm, every season, or every outcome. But you can examine what you plant, improve how you cultivate, and take responsibility for what has been entrusted to you. So let this be the final principle you carry from this message. Stop demanding a different harvest while protecting the same seed.